The day Nolan Mercer found the divorce papers on the kitchen table, the rain was pounding against the windows like a warning he had ignored for years. His wife was already gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a signed document, an empty closet, and a bank account that showed exactly $73.14. Outside stood the only thing she hadn't wanted, a rusty, forgotten garage behind their small house. The roof leaked. The walls were stained with oil. The shelves were packed with broken tools and abandoned dreams. As Nolan stood there staring at the papers in his trembling hands, he felt as if his entire future had collapsed in a single afternoon. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of never giving up, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Beyond Single Dad. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. The months that followed were some of the darkest Nolan had ever known. During the day, he worked odd jobs repairing lawnmowers, fixing bicycles, and helping neighbors with small mechanical problems. At night, he sat alone in the garage, surrounded by rust and silence. Friends stopped calling. Family members quietly assumed he had failed. The men who once dreamed of building something meaningful now struggled to afford groceries. Yet there was one thing Nolan refused to lose, his ability to work. Every evening after finishing his temporary jobs, he returned to the old garage and began cleaning. He removed piles of junk. He repaired broken shelves. He patched holes in the roof using scraps he found at construction sites. Piece by piece, the garage started looking less like a graveyard and more like a workshop. One afternoon, an elderly farmer arrived with a broken harvesting machine. He couldn't afford expensive repairs and had been turned away by several shops. Nolan spent 12 hours rebuilding the damaged parts by hand. When the machine started running again, the farmer's eyes filled with tears. Word spread quickly throughout the county. Soon more people arrived. Old tractors. Broken generators. Damaged farm equipment. Machines that everyone else considered worthless. Nolan discovered something important. He wasn't simply fixing equipment. He was solving problems that larger companies ignored. As demand increased, he began designing replacement components that lasted longer than factory-made parts. Using salvaged metal and countless late nights, he created stronger, more affordable solutions for struggling farmers and small business owners. The $73 slowly became $200. 200 became 1,000. 1,000 became 10,000. But the real change wasn't happening in his bank account. It was happening inside him. For the first time in years, Nolan stopped measuring his worth through someone else's approval. He no longer wondered why his marriage had ended. He no longer replayed old arguments in his mind. Every sunrise brought another opportunity to build something useful. The rusty garage transformed into a small manufacturing workshop. Then a larger facility. Then a growing company called Mercer Industrial Solutions. Investors began noticing. Local newspapers wrote stories about the mechanic who rebuilt his life from nothing. Videos of his innovative equipment spread online. Customers traveled from neighboring states to place orders. 1 year after receiving the divorce papers, Nolan stood inside a bright new factory filled with employees, modern machinery, and hundreds of completed products ready for shipment. The man who once had $73 now owned a company valued in the millions. Yet despite the success, he remained humble. He remembered every hungry night. Every rejection. Every moment when quitting seemed easier than continuing. Then came the day he never expected. His assistant informed him that a visitor was waiting in the lobby. When Nolan walked downstairs, he immediately recognized her. His former wife. Time had changed both of them. The confidence she once carried so effortlessly seemed replaced by uncertainty. The certainty that had fueled her departure had faded from her eyes. She sat quietly holding a folder. Inside were financial documents and investment proposals. The woman who had abandoned the garage because she believed it represented failure was now asking for an opportunity to invest in the company that garage had created. Nolan listened respectfully. He felt no anger. No bitterness. No desire for revenge. Only clarity. Because the truth was simple. The shares she wanted were never built from money. They were built from lonely nights, endless sacrifices, and a year of refusing to surrender when life seemed determined to break him. She had walked away from that journey. And journeys cannot be purchased after they are completed. Nolan politely declined. Not because he wanted to punish her, but because some opportunities belonged to the people who stayed when nobody believed success was possible. As she left the building, Nolan watched through the glass doors. For a brief moment, he remembered the devastated men sitting alone in the leaking garage. Then he looked around at the thriving company, the hard-working employees, and the future he had built with his own hands. The greatest victory wasn't becoming wealthy. It was becoming someone who no longer needed validation from the people who once doubted him. Years later, Nolan created scholarship programs for young mechanics, funded local businesses, and helped struggling entrepreneurs start their own companies. He never forgot where he came from. The rusty garage remained standing behind the factory, preserved exactly as it had been. Visitors often asked why he never demolished it. Because that garage was more than a building. It was proof that hopeless beginnings can create extraordinary endings. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Stories like Nolan's remind us that our lowest moments often become the foundation of our greatest victories. Special request, comment below with the words, "I will not give up," if you believe perseverance can change a person's life. As the sun set over the factory and golden light reflected across the old rusted garage, Nolan smiled quietly. The building that everyone saw as worthless had become the birthplace of his future. And sometimes, the greatest blessing is not what stays in our lives, but what leaves, forcing us to discover the strength we never knew we had.